Good morning, Kalihi Union Church family. You remember that old children's nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Well, we fell. And is it going to fall? No. But we did fall. And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put us together again. Thank goodness the Lord can. Let's continue our message in Genesis. Have a great day.
Genesis tells us that evil has come into the world, and that's a very sad, tragic thing, isn't it? We've been discovering in the last few presentations the idea of where did evil come from, and I think it's the change of the heart. God gives us a heart that's it could be towards Him, but oftentimes we are self-focused, and that's where evil comes in. We turn that which is good to ungood. So we've been answering that question, and of course, what the serpent does in changing his heart is he wants to bring people into his world, into his kingdom. That would give him no greater pleasure than to see people move from one kingdom to another. And so he tempts us. So as we look at the temptation today, we're going to answer this question. What does the temptation call into question? That's an important question to answer. Now, we know there's a temptation, but what does it actually call into question? So we're going to go a little deeper today. And I think the first thing, which we're only covering today, the first thing, and there'll be more in the subsequent presentations, Satan attempts to have us view God's standards as unreasonable restrictions. Let's say take a look at an example of that with Genesis 3:1. Did God actually say, "You shall not eat of any tree in the garden"? That's what the serpent said to Eve. Satan is attempting here to have us view God's standards as unreasonable restrictions. It's very crafty of him to do that. And I hope you can see that. Did God really say? So he's changing our focus. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? And by changing our focus toward the restriction, which is on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the serpent succeeds in directing Eve to a focus which shouldn't have been there. Her focus should have been on the Lord and all that he was provided, but now he's got her to focus on a single prohibition. The strategy in place, Eve responds not to God, but she responds to the temptation, and her response is actually fatal. Eve will die spiritually, and the process of physical death has now begun. What a tragic response of hers. So what should our response be? Well, our response is that we should look upon all that God offers instead of restrictions. We should seek first his kingdom and all his righteousness. Now, that becomes hard for us when we doubt God's goodness. We start focusing on those restrictions, and that can set us up for failure. Here's some good advice. Count your blessings one by one. That's still great advice, isn't it? Paul put it this way to those in Thessalonica: rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Whatever is lovely, dwell on these things. These are responses that we can have in our lives. A response to him and all that he provides, or we can overly focus on restrictions, and the devil will use that as one of his strategies, perhaps the first strategy, in getting our attention away from him. His tactic is this: did God really say? And our response should be this: yes, he did. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again, but God can. So even though we have fallen for the devil's ploys and strategies, we can come back to him and put our trust, and always remember that what God said is true. And let's follow him. Let's put our trust in him. Bless you today, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.